Our story starts with a young man who thought he knew exactly how life would go. He had a plan and he had a dream. And then, with one short conversation and one tiny number in his pocket, that dream ended. At least that's how it looked at the time. Who was he? Well, let's start at the beginning. He grew up around bright lights and big personalities. His father was a larger-than-life figure in the world of professional wrestling, but his son wanted something different. He wasn't chasing the ring, he was chasing the field. By his late teens, he'd become a standout football player, big, fast, and strong. The kind of players coach a circle on the roster and say, "That one, watch that one." And one of the most powerful programs in college football did. They offered him a scholarship, so he packed up his hopes, his cleats, and his future and headed to the University of Miami. At Miami, the competition was brutal. Everyone was good, some were great, and many would go on to the NFL. He contributed to a national championship squad. He tasted success at the highest level of college sports, and he saw NFL dreams all around him. And like so many young players, he believed that was his path too. But football is a funny thing. The difference between star and being cut can be a single injury, a single depth chart decision, a single coach's change of heart. And somewhere along the way, the sure thing dream started to wobble. Still, he wasn't done. If the NFL didn't call, maybe another league would. And one did. A team in the Canadian Football League. The Calgary Stampeders of the Canadian Football League. Not the league every kid grows up dreaming about, but it was professional football. It was a paycheck. It was a shot. So he went. New country, new team, and a new chance. He was 23 years old, and as far as he knew, his life as a pro athlete was just beginning. The reality, though, was a lot harsher. He wasn't starting, he wasn't starring, he was just struggling to hold on. Then, one day, the coaches called him in. Pro teams have a polite way of saying something brutal. They use phrases like roster move or going in a different direction. But they all mean the same thing. He was cut. Just like that, the dream he had carried for years was gone in a meeting that only lasted a few minutes. And now came the part of the story that almost never makes the highlight reels. No cheering crowd, no TV cameras. Just a young man, far from home, sitting on a bed, trying to figure out what the hell would he do next. He reached into his pocket, he checked his wallet, he checked his bank balance. This didn't take long. When he added it all up, every bill, every coin, every last cent, he discovered he had exactly $7. That number hit him harder than any linebacker ever had. He ended up crashing on friends' couches. He ate the cheapest food he could find. He wondered if he had made a big mistake chasing his dream, because here he was, no team, no job, no degree yet, no plan, and just $7. He had what you might call a rock bottom moment. He could have stayed there. A lot of people do. But sitting in that low place, he realized something. Football might be over, but he wasn't. He thought about his father, a man who had fought his way through the world of professional wrestling, who had turned nothing into something. He knew what it was like to be broke, to be doubted, and to push through anyway. So the son picked up the phone. He called home. And on the other end of the line, he didn't get a lecture. He didn't get a "I told you so." He got an invitation. Come home. We'll figure this out. We'll start over. Starting over meant starting from scratch. A different sport, a different world, a different kind of pain. He stepped into a wrestling ring, not as a finished star, but as a student. He ran the ropes until his lungs burned. He took bumps on the mat until his head ached. He studied the art of storytelling in that squared circle with his body and his face with a microphone in his hand. And when it was time to finally debut on national television, wrestling promoters gave him a name that honored his family, a tribute to where he came from. At first, the crowds were curious, then they were skeptical, and then they were loud, very loud, but not in the way that he'd hoped. They booed. They chanted for him to be sent away. They didn't buy the smiling, squeaky clean hero character that had been created for him. Now, for the second time in just a few years, he faced a crossroads. Change or disappear. He chose change. He dropped that forced grin, he dropped the too perfect hero act, and he leaned into something far more powerful. He leaned into being himself. Sarcastic, confident, quick-witted, fearless on the microphone. He reinvented his character. He took a new name, a short, sharp, unforgettable name. Soon, arenas all over the world were echoing that name. He called himself The Rock. The Rock exploded. He wasn't just any wrestler. He was a show all by himself. He strutted. He smirked. He delivered insults that fans repeated the next day at school and at work. He won championships. He headlined the biggest events in the business. He became one of the faces of an entire era of wrestling. The young man with $7 was now one of the most recognizable people on television. But as big as that was, it was not the end of the story. Hollywood came calling. First, it was a small role here, a supporting character there. Then suddenly he was a star. Action films, family comedies, animated features. He did something very few people from any sport had ever truly pulled off. He crossed over. He didn't just try acting. He became one of the most bankable actors in the world. Studio executives started to realize if his name was on the poster, audiences showed up. And the paychecks. Well, they were a long way from those $7 lonely dollars in his pocket in Calgary. Now imagine this. You've gone from broke and cut to box office gold. You can name your company anything you want. Something impressive, something polished, something that sounds like it belongs on the side of a skyscraper. He could have, but he didn't. Instead, he chose a reminder of that tiny number that once defined how much he had fallen. He built a production company, movies, television, streaming, and then he called it $7 Production. $7. Not because 7 is lucky, not because it just sounded catchy, but because it was true. Once upon a time, that was all he had. Over the years, he's told that story to fans, to students, to young athletes trying to figure out their own lives. He talks about being cut. He talks about the fear. He talks about those $7. And he talks about what came next. Not magic, not overnight success, but an attitude. Show up, work hard, be the hardest worker in the locker room, and outlast the doubt. He built a wrestling career, then he built another one in Hollywood. Then he built businesses behind the scenes, all with the same mindset. And every single contract signed by $7 Productions, every movie they release, every show they create, carries a quiet message. Remember where you started. So who was this young man? The college player who thought football was his future? The 23-year-old cut from a Canadian football team with just $7 to his name? The son who went back home and stepped into a wrestling ring? The performer who became so electrifying that the world knew him by a single name, The Rock? The actor who went from broke to one of the highest paid entertainers on the planet? The entrepreneur who's named his company after the lowest moment of his life so he'd never forget it. The young man, that athlete, that wrestler, that businessman. And now you know how it all fits together and became the life of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Thanks all for watching today. This was the Daily Pastcast. If you liked the story that you watched, please consider subscribing to the channel and liking the video. It goes a long way in helping the channel grow. Thanks, and we'll see you again soon. Okay, I think I'm done.